Okay, first video of the fall series. I'm excited about this one. So in this one, we're going to focus on the quarterbacks. We're going to name are the best player at this position. I think you guys know who it's going to be, and also a breakout player, as well as the top freshman. So there shouldn't be a lot of controversy with this, I think, David. But just let's name it. Best quarterback in this group is Derek King going into fall practice. But real quick, just curious if you've got to take on a breakout player and then the top freshman. Thoughts on that? Let's get that out of the way, and then we'll talk about this position group.
Yeah, I mean, I think De'Aaron, obviously the best player. Breakout. I mean, I think if you're gonna say breakout, it'd have to be Jake Garcia, and he would also be the top freshman, right? But I think, and we'll get into this more. I do expect at the end of fall camp for Tyler Van Dyke to be the number 2 quarterback. Now, if they have to cross that bridge with something happening to De'Aaron, I think it could be a real competition between Tyler and Jake. But I think the breakout player after the spring game has to be Jake Garcia.
Yeah, and I think that's who I would pick too. But I think it's going to be Jake Garcia as a breakout player because if something happens to De'Aaron this year, I do expect. I'm kind of like you in that sense. I do think Tyler's going to be that number 2 official kind of backup guy, but I just think Jake's better. I think he proved it in the spring. I think when the opportunity, if the opportunity comes up, I do expect Jake to take it. Again, we're talking about if something happens to De'Aaron, you don't expect Jake to supplant him, pass him up or anything like that. But I do think he'll do well if given opportunities. So it's a little bit trickier of a position group. There's plenty of other groups that a lot of things to get to, but let's stick with quarterback as we're doing this. And De'Aaron, obviously, the big question mark will be his health. I find it very interesting that essentially going into fall practice, there doesn't seem to be a lot of controversy or question if he's going to be ready. Everything that the coaches have been talking about in the offseason over the summer has been he's going to be ready for fall camp. De'Aaron has come out and said he feels 100%. We see a little bit of videos. Everything looks to be good with De'Aaron. And I think we just have to take that. I think in fall
Yeah.
practices, you're expecting them to be out there quite a bit and really no question marks. But do you think that some of that is a little maybe misconceived? Do you think that that's going to be true, or do you think it is something to watch for?
I think it's something to watch, right? But I think it's also fair, as of right now, to take people at their word. And so far, the word is, and, look, I don't know if he's necessarily cleared to participate in a full contact practice yet. To be fair, I think he is on track to maybe do that. And so, look, contact football, totally different deal. And honestly, I don't think he will be tested in that regard until game 1 against Alabama. But do I think he will take the field as the starting quarterback against Alabama? I do. Setbacks could change all that during the course of fall camp. But I do expect him to be the starter. And I expect him to be relatively, I don't know, 80% at least. Hopefully it's better than that. But certainly I think he will be the starter, good to go, relatively speaking, against Alabama. And the hope would be each week progressively get a little better. We've seen the ACL injury is not what it used to be. And probably the best example might be Deshaun Watson, who I think sustained the ACL injury late in a season in the past, and he was fully rehabilitated and made a full recovery starter the next season. So certainly you don't want any setbacks. And as far as we know right now, Derek hasn't had any. But there is previous examples of players sustaining late season ACL injuries and making a comeback to start the next season.
So let's assume he's healthy, ready to go, and can play the whole season. Let's just operate on that with this preview here. So Miami 5th in the ACC in passing last year. I felt like in watching De'Aaron, I felt like obviously he had good games. He had that monster game. We saw that last year's potential. I do think there's room for improvement in the quarterback position
Sure.
with De'Aaron King. I think he can, increase. He threw for 2,600 yards. I think his touchdown total will be up. I think he could produce more at the quarterback position. I think maybe, it wouldn't surprise me if his rushing totals were down a little bit just because, they might throw the ball more. They might give it to the running back. So that wouldn't surprise me if that dipped a little bit. But I do think that they'll be able to pass the ball better. And I just think we're going to see a better De'Aaron King this season.
Let me ask you this. So the passing the ball, I agree. I think the passing numbers will be improved. And yes, De'Aaron does need to improve, particularly with the deep ball placement. But how much of the improvement do you think comes from the wide receiver group improving? Who, no matter who it is, whether it's Mark Pope, D. Wiggins, Charleston Rambo, Keyshawn Smith stepping up, how much do you think that is the factor for the passing game improvement?
Yeah, that's one of the things, and we talked about Rhett Lashley, obviously another year there. I don't think it's we'll get into the tight end stuff, but I do think it's going to be a little bit of drop off. We saw it last year a little bit when Brevin Jordan wasn't out there, so I do think that's a big factor. And I know everyone likes Will Mallory. Again, we'll get into it, but yeah, I think you're expecting improvements there in the passing game. And look, if we're talking about the deep balls, if he connects on a few of those, and obviously he didn't, but just a few of those, you're talking 40, 50-yard chunk plays that
Right.
can really get added to the total fairly easily. Again, you're going to miss on deep balls. You're not going to
Yeah.
connect on all of them, but just a few more of those. And it felt like they weren't that far off. But again, you're hoping more big plays, more explosive plays from the passing game. And I do expect that. And I think, I think he's going to have that potential for those real big games. I think that the first one's going to be tough, obviously, but we're talking about the season. And I'm really curious again with those other quarterbacks, how they're going to develop. Again, the things you like about Jake Garcia, Tyler Van Dyke. Like I said, I like Jake better, but what you saw in Tyler, there's positives there as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I know it's been written about on our website quite a bit, but just you like where they're at with their youth and their talent there, and it hasn't always been that in years past. So, if they do have to go to one of those guys, you like the at least the development, you like their progress, what they've shown for the future as well.
Let me ask you this. So I think there's going to be a lot of talk going into that first game because we touched on it, the unknowns of how healthy De'Aaron is, right? How much he will be willing to run. In my opinion, if De'Aaron's your starter, you have to let De'Aaron be De'Aaron. So I think you have to let him be a runner. I don't think you should take the approach of protecting him by play calling. I also think in order to beat Alabama, you need a dual threat quarterback that can hurt you in both ways. Alabama wants to play a quarterback that just stands in the pocket, right? So what's your take on that? Do you think things will be tailored to protect De'Aaron from a play calling standpoint in that first game against Alabama? And if you think so, would that be, is that smart or is that not smart?
I think it could go both ways when you think of it. Again, I feel like they have confidence in their other weapons, and De'Aaron too. I think he might look at it like, oh, I don't have to run as much. If can set things up a little bit more or find guys that are open. But I'm with you. I think he's got to be himself, and I think that for the season, I just felt like maybe his rushing totals might be down a little bit because he
Yeah,
might choose not to run. But I do expect
agreed.
him. You're hoping him to be healthy, but it's all you have to bring everything to the table if you're
My
going to
thing
try to
is
pull off this
don't hold
upset.
him back. Agreed?
No,
Right.
no, you can't. What kind of team are you? They don't have enough good weapons to beat Alabama trying to hold anything back. It's gonna have to.
Right.
You're gonna have to try to bring everything to the table. Have De'Aaron be De'Aaron and go for that big win to start it out, and then figure it out later. But yeah, I'm with you, and that's well. If you have anything else to add with that, we
Yeah.
can.
Let me ask you one more thing. Just with the backups, right? Um, obviously it would not be good. The season would not go as well if De'Aaron gets injured and they have to shut him down for a bunch of games, right? But how much worse do you think the record would be if a Jake Garcia or a Tyler Van Dyke has to go and start 4 or 5 games? Do you have confidence in them like that? I guess
Yeah,
is what I'm asking.
I do because I think they have enough ability to get wins, and I think that they
I
have enough,
agree.
with the coaching with Rhett and also with the other weapons. Look, they've got guys that they should be able to rely on, and I just think of course the receivers, tight ends can help out a quarterback, but I think about the running game. If they want to go back
Yeah.
to really running the ball, you've got three guys that you could choose from. So I do think they'll be okay. Obviously, I don't think they'll be as good of a team, but I
Right.
think that they'll be okay. And we would not have said that with previous teams with other seasons because of just the inconsistencies. But I think
Correct.
both of those young guys can do well with their completion percentage, their efficiency. even though they might not have that big play potential, those big games that De'Aaron has the potential of doing. But certainly exciting group to watch for this season and for the future. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, lots of talent. I think it's the deepest, if you're talking three quarterbacks we've seen in a while in terms of talent. I think the ceiling with De'Aaron, if everything goes well, 11-1's like the ceiling. I think if Jake Garcia and or Tyler Van Dyke is your starter, it's like a 9-3 ceiling if everything goes well with those two guys. And that's not that bad, right? If we're talking drop off from a star quarterback to the backup quarterback. So overall, I think the position group is in good shape.
Great way to wrap it up, and stay tuned for more positions, more fall camp previews.